this package has just arrived. So this is an enclosure for a power supply, and so for a while I've been using these type of things. So this is the DP50V2A. So I was using that for a while as my bench power supply, and in a recent video, which I'll link up there, in a recent video I swapped this out for the DP50V2A, so one with higher current. So I've got this old module which is still perfectly viable and did me good service. So this is the one with the integral fan that kicks in when you pull a lot of current out of it. This isn't doing anything at the moment, but I bought one of these enclosures which I'm quite interested in. So this is purpose built for this particular type of power supply, and so you get the enclosure, and there's some bits and pieces with it. So the banana plug posts and a fan and so on. So let's open it up and put something together. It's well packed anyway. So just sent from China. I think this cost something like £13, which is a bit cheaper than it normally is. So I was tempted to pick up one of these in the sale. I mean, I don't really need another power supply, but you know, it seems an opportunity too good to miss, really. So we've got the metal case itself, which, oh yeah, so this slides together, so you mount that in there, and it's, oh, it doesn't quite fit together though, it's just pulling apart, you see that? So I might have to find some way to keep that together. There we go, so we've got metal, extruded metal case. Let's have a look in the bag here. We've got front and back panels in the same finish. We've got some mounting hardware, so screws, spade terminals, nuts. We've got a small fan and some power wires, it looks like. Oh, and there's an on-off switch as well, that's quite nice. So it's big rocker switch. Mains rated 16 amps, so that's the mains switch. Some rubber feet for the bottom, and then the 4 banana plug terminals, color coded red and black. I think the intention of this is that you put this electronics and obviously the module into it, and then you have the 2 banana sockets at the front for the output, and then you have 2 banana sockets at the back for input. So you have an input from an external transformer, because obviously there's not an awful lot of room in here to house a transformer. What I was thinking is I might get some rechargeable batteries and get them in there instead. So I've got this thing that just recently arrived. So this is a battery box, and it holds 4 18650s. So you could get 4 times 4 volts, so you could get 16 volts. So you could have a 16 volt rechargeable power supply. And I've somewhere I've got a little electronic module which is a charge controller for 4 cells. So that's another thing that I'm going to be putting together in the next few weeks. So I'm going to build a 4-cell charger. For now, I think I'll just put this together and test it with an external transformer. So finally, we have a circuit board. Let's have a look what's in here. Oh yeah, so obviously the banana plug posts fit onto this circuit board, and this must be for front panel mounting. So we've got a cap on there and a inductor. Not sure what that chip is. Let's get the magnifier and have a look. So that says XL7005A, and the thing next to it looks like it might be a diode or a Zener, I'm not sure. So there don't seem to be any instructions, so I might have to go back to the vendor's website and have a look if there are any assembly instructions, wiring instructions and so on. Like many things, I got this from one of the vendors at AliExpress. So the data on AliExpress can be a little bit variable because obviously they have a lot of different vendors who have different standards. But let me go and look, and I'll see if they've got any clues how to assemble this. So here's the item on AliExpress. It's gone up in price again, so it's now around £16. That's a little more than I paid for it, but still quite good value for, you know, a metal case like this with a fan and the other accessories. So they've got some illustrative pictures here, a little bit of a key to the items that are supplied, and there's no actual assembly instructions, but the pictures showing things actually wired together, I think is probably all that I need. And you see this circuit board here. This is actually for the back panel. So you got this is the external power coming in via the switch, and so you've got a couple of places to mount the banana plug sockets here on the back panel. And it's obviously feeding the fan off here, so perhaps this circuit is bringing this down to 16 volts or 12 volts or whatever that fan needs to run. It does look like the fan is going to be running 100% of the time, so which won't necessarily be welcome. Perhaps we could run the fan and see how noisy it is, actually. See what that's going to be like. You see this picture here. So this is one of the higher power units. So some of these the units in this range, they have the same front panel assembly, but then the actual power supply is on an auxiliary board. So this is how you get the much higher currents with this big auxiliary board. In the case of mine, I only really need this space and whatever's on the back panel. So if I do decide to put the 18650 power cells in here, I've got a bit of room for the cells, and I could probably squeeze in a circuit board there in terms of charging the cells. So we'll have to see how that goes. The existing one of these units that I'm using in a bench power supply, I've just got fitted in a small plastic box, which you may have seen on one of my videos before. So it's right here at the back of the bench, because it fits quite nicely underneath the monitors for my computer. So it's quite useful to have a bench power supply that's always available, and you can always reach out and plug something into it. So that's turned out to be a really good thing. This is going to be a bit sleeker, and we'll have to see how that turns out, how useful that's going to be. So looking at the fan, let's pull the fan out. Alright, so that's rated at 5 volts. So we can get 5 volts on there and see what that sounds like. I'm not sure, I've got one of these connectors. Oh yeah, it's interesting. So there's no no actual connector supplied, it doesn't seem, for this thing, so perhaps the intention is that you cut this off. I might just stick some wires in there for the sake of testing. Right, got a couple of bits of single-stranded wire here, so put the red in the red and the white in the black. Connect it to my good old bench power supply. Oh, so that's actually rather silent. So that's running at 120 milliamps. It's current limiting. Let me take the current limit off. Oh yeah, so that's 200 milliamps. It's pulling a little bit of air. And put it a bit closer to the mic so you can hear it. So that's really quite quiet. Let's see what it's going to be like mounted on the case. Yeah, I think that's going to be okay actually, even if it's on all the time. So that's good. Looking at the how the unit fits on the website on AliExpress, it doesn't name this module explicitly. It has a number of different model numbers, DPS3003, the various DP ones, DP50V2A. Well, this is the I think this is the 50V2A if I remember right. But I think they're all exactly the same in terms of mounting. So that drops in. It's not holding really solidly with these clips on the side, but I expect I can jam a little shim in there or something to make it sit in there more snugly. I think possibly because this has been actually sat in my homemade box for a while, these little clips on the side have become a little bit compressed and they're not sticking out much anymore. So just give that a tweak, see if that's any better. That way around. Yeah, not much, but I think I can just shove in a shim of plastic or something and make that hold into place. So I think that looks pretty good. I've fitted a couple of plastic shims now, so these are like just little offcuts of a plastic card that I had. And I've just shoved those through the gap there, and it's very, very solid now, so that's a good solution. I've put one of these terminal posts in. There were no tags in here to solder on a wire, so I've dug out some old ones from a drawer. These need a bit of going over with sandpaper, I think, because they're a bit tarnished. I shall use those. If you haven't seen this style before, let me just take one apart. So the actual mounting bracket here, you see it's got a little bit of plastic sticking up, so that when you put it through the hole, there's no chance of, let me get that in lined up properly. There's a bit of a plastic rim filling up the hole, so there's no chance of the terminal actually shorting out against the metal of the panel. So there we go. So that's quite good. So I'll put the mount the switch in the fan. The switch is just a push in. I'm not sure which way up this goes. Let's mount the fan first. There should be some specific screws for this. Oh, it'll be these ones, I think. It's not really long enough. Perhaps it's these ones. It's nice that everything's in separate little bags. Oh, that's got a thing for a captive nut. So this is where the nuts fit in, I guess. And sometimes these fans are held in with kind of self-tapping screws, but not in this case. Yeah, that looks like the right size. Just put one of those in. There we are, all mounted nicely. This needs to be cut back actually, because it's only going to go to the board here. So once again, these posts for the banana plugs. I guess I'm calling this the top, so I'll fit that one there. It doesn't seem to fit. It's just a bit too tight. Ugh, there you go. Use unreasonable force, seems to work. Right, so we'll put a bolt on there. And now, of course, this is wrong. Let's put this on. Again, that's a little tight. Right, so the board plops down on top of those two pillars. Except it doesn't. Oh yeah, no, it does fit. It's just a bit snug, that's all. We'll put the washer on there for good electrical contact. There we go. So we've got the 5 volts for the fan here, so these wires only need to come around to here really, and then we've got, these are the input wires I think, which will come from the switch, or at least one will come. Yeah, it's a single pole switch, so one wire will come from the switch. And this chip, I looked it up, D7005, wasn't it? This is a buck converter chip, so this has been set up for 5 volts out for the fan, but the input can go anything up to 85 volts, so that's quite a useful range. So the power coming into these pins here can be anything up to 85 volts. And the cap here's got a 100 volt rating, so you should be able to put more or less any DC output power supply into here. So the last item is the switch. So if we're saying this is the top, let's see, I probably want it so that you have to press it down in order to switch it on. That's common convention, isn't it? There we go, just a press fit, and that's good and solid, that's not going to fall out again. So there's just a few wires to solder on. They've given a small length of wire here. Looks quite good. Let's just strip a bit of that off. Yeah, so it looks like genuine copper. And it's multi-stranded, so that's be good for carrying a bit of current. So I'll just cut some bits of wire to length and get that soldered up. Right, we're getting to the final assembly now. So I've got some wires connected to the banana posts at the front here. I had to route the wires over the top here because there's not much clearance at the bottom when you kind of mount it, as it will be in the end. You can only just about squeeze the wires in the bottom, so maybe that's why this particular module isn't named as one for this case, but I think I can probably just about squeeze it in. So the vents, the inlet vents, I think are best at this end, so that you've got some air being drawn up through the case, through the fan up front. And then we've got the rear panel here, which is all assembled now. So we've got the switch in line, the little board with the buck converter for running the fan, and then so these are the input banana plugs up to, well, it's 85 volts for this buck converter, but I think the maximum input voltage for this is about 40 volts, so probably no more than 40 volts. So all I need to do now really is lead these wires across to the front, connect them into here, and then I can start assembling things, screwing everything to the front panel like so, front and back panels. So let me just get those wires in place, and I can do the final gluing together. So I've got all the wires in place now, and it looks okay. I don't think they're going to short out against anything. I've just put a couple of the screws in the bottom there to keep everything in place for a moment, and then the next bit is to slide the case over the top and finish attaching these. So we've got some rubber feet left. What else we got? 4 screws, which I imagine for attaching the circuit boards of the bigger type power supplies to the bottom there. And there's also a couple of spade terminals, which I didn't have to use with this module. So let's stick these feet on, and then we can do a power up. A little bit wobbly, but it'll do. So, connect up some power. fan's running. There you go, that's pretty nice. There you go, there's the new power supply, and it's been driven by the old power supply.